So I had a severe fear of heights. The sets were like 40 feet in the air. There were rails on every of the lower 3 levels of the arc, but the top level, they didn't have any rails.
That's what you needed the most.
That's right. And I wasn't tethered to anything. I actually had to get acclimated to the sets. And we'd climb up to a level and I'd go to the edge of the set and I'd pray and sing and cry and pray and sing and cry. And then when I felt well enough, I'd go up another level higher. When I got to the last show, it was like, God, you brought me through that, all the fear and the worry, and I was able to stand here like totally victorious.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to What Matters Media. My name is Matthew Baker, and today we talk with Reji Woods. He's an incredible actor, but also just a man of deep character. He talked a lot about his journey of being a Christian actor, but also just some great advice on how to stick with the dreams and passions that are on your heart. So thanks for tuning in. Let's get to the interview. How you doing today, Reji?
I'm good.
Thanks for taking the trek from Lancaster.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool to have you here.
It was an easy ride, though.
Yeah. So, Reji, I met you a handful of years ago.
Yeah.
I saw you before I met you in a Sight and Sound show, which is cool. And then I think I met you doing something with another theater company. But yeah, something I learned about you really early was that you were genuine and that you embody joy. And that's something that I was like, man, this guy's really cool. He's unique. And so I was really glad when I saw you a couple months ago and you were willing to come on here, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's so cool. I'm excited. So Reji,
grateful to be asked.
Yeah. So you're from Florida originally, right?
Yeah, Orlando, Florida.
And you came up to Pennsylvania how many years ago?
So 2010 is when I was officially here. So
yeah, and you've done stuff with Sight and Sound theaters. You've done stuff with other theaters in
Lancaster. Yeah, with like Prima Theater, Servant Stage, Theater of the Seventh Sister, which I think they're no longer around.
Okay.
Which is sad because they offered a different theater experience. So
yeah, and you've also done stuff.
Oh, and the Fulton, yeah, I did a show at the Fulton as well.
And just in your full career, you've been on Broadway and all different kinds of places. You've done your own cabarets that I've been to. Am I pronouncing that right?
Cabarets, okay. Perfect. Yeah,
and yeah, so much stuff with theater. And how did you kind of start? I mean, it's a pretty big, and I probably am missing so much, but how did you start in the career of theater and
professionally, or just start?
Just in general.
Well, I was first introduced to theater when I was 9.
Okay.
My mom took me to see a touring production of West Side Story.
Oh, cool.
And I was so enthralled, the entire time. I was just sitting on the edge of my seat. And I know, you think 9 years old and you think West Side Story, those two things probably would not go together. Yeah. But from the opening sequence, just watching them do the gang fight / ballet.
Yeah.
To,
unique.
Yeah. To watching them do America, and then seeing, and at the end, even them carrying him out, I understood what was happening, but it was neat because I was kind of transformed for that time. But the minute that it was over, I understood. I was like, oh yeah, that's everybody, they bowed and everyone's alive and everything's okay. And but then I realized, this is how you, this is acting. And I was like, I told my mom that day, and I know she didn't really put much stock in it, but I was like, I want to do that. She's like, okay, dear, yeah, but there weren't really a lot of opportunities as a kid to do that in my hometown. So, or there were opportunities, they just weren't opportunities for us, for where we lived on our side of town and that sort of thing. And so, so but what did happen that same year, which kind of led me into theater, too, was I started going to the public library, and they had cassette tapes of music, like musicals or singers. So I would like just pick 3 out, and I would listen to them over and over, and I started to sing along with them.
That's so cool.
And it wasn't till literally I was 9 when I learned that I even had a voice. Because I was singing. Then I remember one day, I was in between like getting more cassette tapes, and I was just singing something that I had been listening to the prior week.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, "Turn that music down." And I was like, "I don't have any music on." And she was like, "Oh, are you being disobedient? Are you telling me, like, I hear music, you can't tell me?" And she came in the room, and I was like, I was singing. She's like, "Well, then do it again."
Yeah, that's
And
so
then
cool.
I did it again, and she was like, "Oh, it really was you."
Yeah.
And so then, I think from then on, I had sung, like, all, like, just...
Especially as a kid, when you get that kind of affirmation, especially from a parent, like, that just sticks. You're like, okay, here we go. That's super fun.
So that was kind of the start. But then I went through middle school and high school not doing any theater really. I was in like, I took a drama class, but like was never cast in any shows or anything. And so it didn't really happen for me until I didn't start even doing shows until after I came back from college. And so my high school director had told me that I am because I was gonna go to Alabama State University for theater, and she told me that I didn't have what it took to have a career in theater.
Wow.
And that if I wanted a career in entertainment, that I should try and get a record deal. And I, being young and impressionable, I believed her. So I'd already paid my housing deposit and everything for Alabama. But then I was like, well, that's not, obviously, I can't go there now because that's not good for me. And so it was like, what else am I good at? What else do I love? And I love the political process and political policy, and I love seeing how the economy affects, sociologically what happens in our world.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I was like, I'll go to school for political science and economics. I'll be a double major. And I only applied to one school. And I got in, so I was very happy because my mom was freaking out. She was like, well, you already got accepted to Alabama State. And you just go there and see if you can just change your major and go there. I was like, oh, I don't want to go there for that. I want to go there for theater.
Yeah.
If I was going to go there, whatever school I'm going to go to, I want to go to a school that's going to be effective for what I want to do. And so I ended up going to Howard University. And I loved being in D.C. and some of the stuff I got to do, I never would have gotten to do had I not gone. And so it was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But then I found myself wanting to, like, I was nearing the end of my schooling, and I was like, that's not where my heart is. I want to do theater. And so I ended up going back to school. I came home, and went back to school for theater, and ended up getting a scholarship, so I didn't even have to pay for it.
Wow, that's a blessing.
So it was one of those things where I was like, God, I don't want my mom to have to stress about like helping me pay for college again because I'd already gone. So like, help me, and I ended up getting a scholarship.
That's so cool.
So I was like, oh, okay, well, great. Then it was because sometimes you get ready to take a step and it's scary, and you don't know if it's your will or God's will,
For sure, yeah.
And so for a lot, so it was like, give me a sign that I am doing the right thing.
For sure.
And sure enough, like I feel like I got a sign.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool sign.
Yeah.
And I can attest that, like, hey, every time I see you on stage, like, I'm just like, yes, that guy is made for that.
Thank you.
It's crazy to me for me to think about that teacher that kind of just shot you down. And it wasn't ill-intended, I'm sure.
No, it wasn't. She actually, like, maybe 5 years ago, contacted me on Facebook.
Yeah.
And she actually apologized to me.
Wow.
She goes, I've been seeing what you've been doing. And she apologized, and she was like, she wanted what was best for me because she had gone the New York route and had been very disappointed.
Yeah.
Because she, like me, we're both plus size actors, and so her big concern was that I was much smaller then, so I don't know why she was as concerned, but but she was, and she didn't want me to be disappointed or hurt because of rejection.
Yeah.
And she had dealt with it.
Yeah.
But I was like, we're different people. And that was like the 80s. She was, when she went to New York, and I feel like it was a different.
Yeah, thankfully it's a little bit more forgiving in some ways, not in others.
And I think we had a different skill set. So, but I mean, I look back and I appreciate her for caring enough to try to like keep me from harm's way. And again, had I not gone to Howard, I would not have experienced as much as I did.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for those experiences. Like, there are things that like I never would have done, and never would have experienced, were it not for going there. So I am grateful for that. So yeah, and so she like apologized, and I was blown away because I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, for sure. Because most people won't get that.
Yeah, and so I feel very blessed that I did, and the fact that like years had passed and that she thought about that, I was like, well, I was like, I don't know if she was like taking stock or something. And even if she was, it wouldn't matter to me. Like, that the kindness of her coming and saying that to me was incredible. So.
Yeah. And I think we all can kind of learn from that like when we're thinking about encouraging people, to not think of it from our own perspective, especially as a Christian, we can have a little bit better of an understanding of things and not that we have this crazy better understanding, but that we can say, God, what are you thinking here? What do you think for this person?
Yeah, and give me words. Yeah, because I don't ever want to, even when I'm just giving like advice to like my mom or my brothers and sisters or even my wife, I'm like, I don't want it to just be from me. Yeah, because I can be completely wrong. Yep. Yeah, and probably would be completely wrong. Yeah. But
I was thinking about how for Peter and for some of the other disciples, but for Peter specifically, I'll just give his example. When Peter came up to Jesus, he said, "I know who you are. You're Simon, but I'm going to call you Peter." And he changes his name to a name that means rock, intentionally. And he sees him for his potential, not for where he's at. Because he made a lot of mistakes, through that whole time with Jesus. And like, when we see people, are we looking at them through our own vantage point, or are we looking at them through the vantage point of Jesus and what they're created for? And I think that's super cool to even think about. It's like, wow, how cool it is that God even gives us that encouragement for people. Right. Now, I know one way that you really invest in the younger generation, but even just people that are not at the place that you're at, is through voice lessons. That's a way that you invest in people. Would you say that that's how you look at that? Or how would you say you most intentionally invest in people that are wanting to get into theater? Into the arts?
That's a large way. Because that's a very direct way for me
Yeah.
But what's interesting about those is like I always ask like when we first get together, like what it is they want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Because everybody has a different goal. And like I have students that are like, I want to go to Broadway, and I'm like, okay, that's a whole different level of work that goes into that.
Yeah.
But I had one student that just said, I want to be able to sing in front of people and not cry.
Wow.
And so the first year we had a recital. This is in one of my first sets of students. What I would do with my students, they would do a solo, and then we would sing together and do a duet together.
Yeah.
And we finished singing our song together, and I looked down at him, and the look on his face just... I started like crying right there, because it was just like seeing just him achieving the goal that he wanted. Like that, all he wanted
so cool.
was just to be able to sing
Uh-huh.
in front of people and not be scared.
Yeah.
And so, I think for me, like, yeah, for those who want to be in theater, it's a way to invest in them and give them a safe space to be able to express themselves through theater.
Yeah.
I think that's part of my that was part of my mission for when I applied to be the theater director at Erfurt High School. That was a big part of my why.
Yeah.
So when they interviewed me, they're like, okay, tell us like what your goals would be. And it was, for me, it was to give a safe space to those kids to be able to create. And we have such a variety of kids. We have kids that are believers, and we have kids that are like, I wouldn't say the opposite of believers, but they just aren't believers.
Yeah.
But loving them all the same.
Yep.
And showing love, because there's been so many times that I've heard the thing like, oh, you're a Christian? And I'm like, yes. And like, but you're nice. And that just breaks my heart.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Yeah, we're
We're supposed to be. That's
like,
what we're supposed to be known by.
Yeah. So it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I have like kids that like, they know that I'm a believer. And so, but they never feel as if I'm judging or or I won't, they're not my favorites, or like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it's only because I want to lead with love, and always, because I think that's what I'm personally called to do.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you said that the one thing you knew about me was joy. Like that's every show that we do, we have like kind of our overarching word for that show, and this one is joy.
Wow.
And so I was like,
That's so
yay, good. Yeah. And I tell students, attack everything in this show with joy. Like that's the goal.
Wow, that's so cool. So how did you? Now I know a little bit of a little part of your story is that you were in New York and then kind of came here. It was supposed to be a short stint, and then ended up being
a long
lot
stint.
longer.
Yep.
How was that kind of transition? Talk a little bit about what you were doing in New York and how you got back here.
And so what basically happened was, I was working in New York. I had gotten a lot of times when you're there, like I'd done a couple off-Broadway shows and at that time, and then a couple shows out of town, because a lot of times you end up working out of town because everyone comes to New York to get actors for their theaters elsewhere.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to be able to get to do some traveling and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I had gotten just a 6-month contract to do Psalms of David, and I had actually, like 4 years before that.
That's Sight and Sound.
Yeah.
Yep.
Had done Psalms of David and then moved to New York. So they're like, can you come back for 6 months? We're closing the theater. This is the final year of it. We'd love to have you come back and do it again. And I was like, okay, great. So that when I had first come that time, they were writing Voices of Christmas. And as they were writing and developing, I was there at that time. And had done some of the scratch track work for them and everything. And it kind of one character they had kind of written with me in mind, and so I ended up when I left to go. They let me go to. I got to leave my contract just a hair early to go to New York to do a tour, and so they let me out to go do that, and then ended up not being able to come back. So
That's so crazy. You know something funny about that? Is I was in that Voices of Christmas show. We would have worked together.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
no.
Oh man.
So that ended up being the thing that kept me here longer because we were finishing up Songs of David, and then Voices of Christmas was coming. And the one weird thing is that I had done the promo for it before I left. So one year I was coming in town to visit during Christmas time, past the Living Waters Theater, and there was like a wall-sized picture of me as I was like, what? Okay, this is kind of funny and scary and cool, and it was kind of neat to see that up there. So when we got to the end of Songs of David, they were like, okay, well, some people are going to be asked to stay for Voices of Christmas. Some people are going to be moved up to Miracle of Christmas, and some people are going to just be let go. And so we're like, okay. And I fully expected to be heading back to New York. Like that there was no question. I was like, yeah, I'm heading back to the city. It's going to be great. Da 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 da. And they're like, they offered me a contract to stay for Voices of Christmas, and I was like, the only way I'd stay for Voices of Christmas is if I'm going to be Carolyn number 2. And they're like, of course, because that was the role. I was like, oh, great. Okay, then if that's the case, then yeah, I'll stay and do it. Towards the end of that one, was called in the office for our meeting, and they were like, you're probably not going to get a contract after this because we're closing this theater and we're going to be moving up there. And you're a song and dance guy, so the chances of you having a contract are probably slim. I was like, okay, I'm fully expecting to go back. I still have my apartment in New York and everything.
Okay.
But sure enough, they offered me a role in Joseph on the main stage, and I was like, I've always wanted to work up there, so okay, I'll stay and do that. Yeah. But during that time, I would literally leave and go to the city right after shows on Saturday and come back on Tuesday right before shows. Wow. So I was only here during the week. And that was just kind of the MO. And then that year, for my birthday weekend, like I decided to stay in town and hang out with everybody. And everyone had plans. And I was like, it's my birthday weekend. And the one time I decided not to go, now everybody has plans. This sucks. So I was like, well, I'm just going to, so I was complaining in the dressing room.
Yeah.
And 2 seats down, my friend, Adam Diener was like, hey, you can come and hang out with me and my friend Audra. I was like, no, I don't want to be a third wheel. That's okay. I'll just order in and something, I don't know. Yeah. And they're like, well, serious, like for real. She's like my cousin, so you should come. And I was like, fine. And that was the day that I met my wife. Wow. That was Audra. She was there. That's so cool. And though I did not think she liked me at all, and not just romantically, because I wasn't even thinking like that. I thought she liked me as a person when I met her.
Oh, interesting.
But I should have known, like, that couldn't have been the case. She gave me a birthday card, and I still have it. And I was like, I don't even know her, and she gave me a birthday card. Yeah. So just between, so then that happened, and then the next year, we were doing Jonah. And they were like, you'll be on the DVD. And I was like, oh, great. Okay. I've never done a show where I was on a DVD before. And I met this really cool girl that I really like a lot. I'll stay and do that show. Yeah. And then the next year was like, we're going to actually have the singers be on the DVD, be on the CDs for the show. And I was like, what? I'm gonna actually be on a CD too? And I'm like, and by this time, we were engaged.
Wow.
So I was like, yes, I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna do that show.
Yeah.
And then, it was just great. Like everything just kept happening, and I got to be Noah in Noah, which was an incredible journey for me in a lot of ways. I feel like God like really stretched me. And also, I had a severe fear of heights.
Okay.
Severe, and I didn't even think when I was auditioning about the heights.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was going to be Noah in the first place. So I was like, that's not going to happen. And then it happened, and I'm like, okay, yeah. And then my friend's like, you realize you're going to have to be like way up in the arc, right? I was like, what? And so, but I had said, and I was like, okay, God is kind of awesome and funny because I was like, I don't ever want to do it. I just don't ever want anything to separate me from being able to do what you called me to do.
Yeah.
You know, one of those speeches to God. And I have a severe fear of heights. And so I was like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah. I'll do whatever you want, but like,
yeah,
the whole heights
but
thing,
I have a
that's
small list of things that I don't. And so I once I realized there's no going back. I actually like went in 2 weeks before anyone else and had to get acclimated to the set. So I was in like the warehouse, and we'd climb up to a level, and I'd go to the edge of the set, and I'd pray, and sing and cry and pray and sing and cry. And then when I felt well enough, I'd go up another level higher.
Wow.
On all the set pieces. So it was just me and the stage manager, and he would be there with me every step of the way, and he'd step away and let me like have my moment or whatever, or he'll pray with me if I need it, or. But it was a lot. I'll tell you, it was like, because the sets were like 40 feet in the air, and at the highest level, like there were rails on every of the lower 3 levels of the arc, but the top level they didn't have any rails.
Oh wow. It's like that's what you need it the most.
That's right. And I wasn't tethered to anything, and so it was a lot, but I was very grateful, because I realized at the end of that there was nothing that I could not do with with the Lord, because I'd always said that was something I could never do. I had to ride up in a scissor lift doing a costume change, step out of that lift into another box that was on top of a scissor lift that was magnetic. It was crazy.
That is.
At any rate, I had to step out of one into the other, and it was like the chasm that was between it, and then looking down and seeing nothing but floor, and that was 35 feet in the air. So like, yeah, just God's faithfulness. Me getting like when I got to the last show, I was so emotional because it was like, God, you brought me through that, all the fear and the worry and the concern and discomfort. You brought me through it all, and I was able to stand here like totally victorious.
Yeah.
In Him, and so it makes the scripture says I can do all things through Christ. It strengthens me. It's like, yeah, I actually really can. Like that was evidence that I actually really can. So that was incredible. But yeah, that's how it turned into the 6 years and then I just stayed, and then I finally gave up my apartment, and that was the hardest thing to do. I was like, no.
Yeah, because even though you knew you were where you wanted to be, you were still giving up on a chapter.
Yeah.
So closing.
Or at least closing it out a little bit. Yeah. I still, because of proximity, there were a couple years where I would spend half the week here and half the week there. So I would be there auditioning and that sort of thing, and then come home. But I have the most supportive wife in the whole wide world. So
yeah, that is so cool. I didn't know that I thought you guys were together longer than that. You guys just meshed so well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It really like we really did start out as friends, but it like, I don't know, it was really interesting because we talked about everything.
Yeah.
And I think that was what, like, as friends we talked about everything. So that when it became romantic, when I like, and literally I was just like, I don't want to not be in her company. Like that was kind of the first thing.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, but we talk about everything and we agree on so much. There's very little that we disagree about, just life things. And we talked about everything from like, even though like we don't have children, we talked about like child rearing. We talked about our stances on a lot of social things, about even political things. Like we didn't shy away from any of those talks, just as friends.
Yeah.
And that was great because then I knew who she was when we started to date, and I knew who she was when I decided I was like, yeah, I want to walk through this life with her. And so, yeah.
That's so cool. And I think it's neat because when you're open with just people in general, you never know where it'll bring you.
Right.
And whether it's a friendship, whether it's the person that ends up being your person, like just being an open person gives you places to find freedom and friendship in places where, a lot of times if you didn't say the thing, you wouldn't know, and you just kind of think you were alone on something. And before we started the cameras, you're like, I'm an open book, and I'm like, I love that because there's so many people that are so afraid of what people think about their general life stuff, when it's like, most people don't care that much,
right?
But the things that matter will stick. And so we really don't have to fear that much of like being that place of, you know what, this is me.
So true.
Are we shaping up the front here?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Sweet. So we're kind of getting closer to the end of the haircut, and one question I've been loving to ask people is, what's one piece of advice of all the things we've talked to? You've been through a lot and we've only scratched the surface, I'm sure. But what is one piece of advice that you would, if you could talk to your 20-year-old self, what's one piece of advice you would give him?
Well, I will tell you, it's just to keep on going. Like, honestly, and what I mean by that is like, there are times when it got super lonely because if you set a standard for yourself, there we go. Got it. If you set a standard for yourself, it gets hard, especially doing theater, and being a Christian. Sometimes that can be very difficult. But you have to just don't give up, and it's okay sometimes if you're lonely. Because I've had some of the loneliest times of my life and my career choice. Just simply because I didn't always just go with the flow or go with everyone else. And it can be very hard and challenging and lonely. But know that you're never alone.
Yeah.
And so I would just remind myself of that. But because there were days where I was complaining Carl because I wanted to be able to have the fun and do the things that all my friends did, and but I just couldn't. And there are roles that I had to turn down and opportunities that that I was like, my career's over. Okay, great. Yeah, it's over because I said no to this. But
was that because of faith choices?
Yes.
Or
But you have to stand your ground, and stand on your beliefs, and know that it's all gonna work out, and whatever is for you is for you. And I would think I would have reminded myself of that. Nothing that is yours is going to pass you by. So just stick in there.
Yeah.
And if I would have I think if I would have heard that more or known that, I would have been a lot happier at times.
Yeah.
The few times where I wasn't so happy, it would have been that. And then the other piece of advice is play the piano. Stick with the piano. Do not stop playing the piano.
Give it up.
Because you're going to need it. And so that's a big thing I would have told myself. Yeah, like you're gonna need it, bud. And so that I did not tell myself, and I did not finish. So now I can like plunk, plunk, plunk something, but like,
Yeah.
but if ever I'm like getting a new piece of sheet music, I'm like, dang it.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to like play through it, and sometimes even for my students, to be able to play through something would be great. So, so that's the piece. That's like the practical advice I would give myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's just it's not the easiest path to take. Doing theater and being a Christian is just not the easiest path.
Yeah.
But it's a beautiful path, and it's rewarding when you finally get to that place that you were meant to get to. And like with my students, I mean, a lot of them, a lot of my private students are students who are followers of Christ, and so I can talk about some of that stuff with them. But one thing that that in my adulthood has really I don't know, has resonated with me is the fact that I feel so close to the Father when I am creating, because He's a creator. And I was like, the fact that He gives me a skill set is exactly what He did.
Yeah.
Like, makes me
What an
feel
honor.
like, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, you mean to say that like the very thing that like He is known for is creating everything, I get to have, I get to do that too, in small, much smaller way, but that He allows inspiration to come to me and to be able to create. That's when I feel closest.
That's super cool.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. How's that looking for you, Reggie?
Nice.
What are you thinking?
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for being here, Reggie.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. It was fun.